In this video, I'm going to show you the 4 ways that I like to use Soothe on my tracks. For those of you who don't have Soothe, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you how to achieve the same results using just stock FL Studio plugins. Now, I know that there's plenty of tutorials on what Soothe is and what it does, but I often find people just showcase the plugin without actually explaining what it's doing. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 4 techniques. The first is the most obvious. We're going to use Soothe to clean up some resonance within our mix. The second will be cleaning up resonance from the mid and the sides independently. The third, we're going to use Soothe to sidechain our kick and our bass. And for the fourth, we're going to use Soothe to unmask some of the frequencies that are clashing in our mix. So if you've ever wondered, do I really need Soothe and will buying an extra plugin really help me out? Well, I hope that this video will make things clear for you. So let's get started. Alright, so I've pulled up the stems from a song called Dedication, which I released last year. Now this is the unmixed and mastered version, but I'm going to use this for today's example to show how Soothe actually works. And as you can see from my project, I have Insight 2 by iZotope to actually analyze our signal so we can validate the changes that we're making to our mix. So first, let's listen to what the song sounds like. So now that we know what the song actually sounds like, let's add Soothe to our master channel to remove some of those resonant frequencies out of our mix. All right, so I've opened up Soothe and it starts with the default preset. If you just slap it on, again, the obvious, I can move around the filters, and wherever these filters are set, this is where the software starts to automatically duck down certain annoying frequencies. So if I just play it right now, this is what it's doing. So I'm going to state the obvious for those who maybe don't know how Soothe works. So here I have a filter, my low cut filter. So it's selecting everything that is within here, and same thing here, high cut filter. And these are just band filters here that you can enable. And then again, you can mess with the Q to see how wide or narrow you want that to be. So if I play this, I'm going to click on Delta. So now I can see just what it's doing. So you see here, if I go sharpness, see it's exactly like you narrow the Q on a filter. Again, selectivity, see how selective it is versus like a more broader. If I go like this, you'll see exactly what I mean. See, now I was just looking for those peaks. When you go selectivity, now I was just looking for the peak of those resonance, where now it's grabbing more of that signal. And everything that you're hearing here is everything that is going to get removed from the mix. So if I go depth, it's obviously going to grab more. So you can even sweep around and listen to see if you find anything annoying. And then dial it into preference. So you can just take it down, adjust the sharpness, and then so other than just it sounding more pleasing to our ears, we can actually look to see if it's making any difference in our, again, peaks in the levels, also the overall loudness of the song. So just to overemphasize it, I'm going to really duck down some of the low end information, and then you're going to see the difference it makes. So you can see here for the short term and the momentary loudness and where those levels are. And even here, if we look at the peaks, we can see that. And if I bypass it, you can see how it goes up. So again, you would dial this into preference, but you don't necessarily need Soothe for this. So let's actually do that with the Fruity Parametric Equalizer. All right, so I pulled up the Fruity Parametric Equalizer and let's play the song. What you want to do is ensure that you click on the options and have the heat map enabled so you can actually even see where there's a lot of information happening. So as this song is going to play, I'm going to grab one of the filters, narrow the Q, start listening for resonance, and then I'm going to duck it down, and then you're going to see what it does. So without taking too much time into this video, you can see that you can actually listen for those annoying frequencies and just manually duck it down yourself. Obviously, for the sake of this example, I'm just sort of sweeping through. But again, how you would do this without an intelligent processor is by just picking a filter yourself and then sweep it across. A lot of EQs gives you the solo option. So if you have a filter and you grab a filter, you can solo and just hear what that filter is hearing. Makes it a bit easier. But even if you just have one of these, you just lift it up. Again, narrow the Q band. You can change the shape of it as well. So how you want it to slope, you see when I change it here, makes it more close to a band pass versus like a very sharp Q filter, right? So if you want it wider, so this would be similar to a band pass, or you can make it super narrow and look for those resonance yourself. So when you're playing it, you're just sweeping it and seeing where it's annoying and then ducking it down there. Right there we go. And try not to overdo this because oftentimes you can level a lot of these out. So really only pull out some of that obvious information, but that's how you remove resonance from a mix using Soothe or a standard Fruity Parametric equalizer. All right, next, let's do some mid-side processing using Soothe. And for that, I'm going to solo my vocal bus because when the song was created, the vocal bus had chopped up vocal samples as well as some effects that were routed to that vocal bus. So all of that is mixed into that signal itself. So if I solo it, you can listen. All right, so let's clean up some of that signal using Soothe. What I'm going to do is change the mode here from left-right to mid-side. And by default, it grabs the same from the mid as it does from the side, but we can change it to mid only, side only, or predominantly mid and a little bit of sides, or predominantly sides and a little bit of mids. But for this example, we have our sound field here on the left, so we can look in our Insight plugin. We can look at the signal and we can see what changes it's making to it. So let's play and then let's take a listen. See if I'm going to over-exaggerate, just to kind of show you. I'm just crushing the sides right now. So if I listen to the delta, this is what it's pulling from the sides. And you can see here in our image, this is all it's pulling from the sides, right? So it's basically turned my signal almost to mono, really. It really narrowed it down. So if I bypass it, you can see how wide this signal is. But let's not overdo it like this. Let's just clean up a little bit of resonance in here. So let's go to delta and take a listen. So this is only the sides. This is where I really wanted to clean up. Let's take a listen on and off. Okay, now I'm going to add another Soothe on the same vocal bus that is going to pull out the mids only. So we had the one below on the sides, and then this one is going to do the mids only. So let's listen in. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is the attack time and the release. So if you want Soothe to right away start suppressing that signal, or if you want it to be a little bit slower, so it starts processing, it lets a little bit of the signal through before it starts processing, and it releases the same thing. So you can tweak those. Again, all of this is according to preference. So you listen in and you see what it does. I always listen in delta, see how much it's grabbing, then I toggle it off and hear the full mix. And then in context, Okay, so now that we've seen how Soothe can remove resonance independently from the mid and the side signal, how do we do that using stock plugins? Let's open up Patcher first. So I have Patcher opened up, and under presets, click here and look under filter for mid-side EQ. And there we go. Now we have a mid and a side EQ, so we can listen to our signal. And again, you can enable the heat map. So again, if you wanted to do that, you could use these two as well. I'll be honest with you, I don't get that narrow. If I have that much resonance in my signal, there's probably an issue with the mix itself. I would much rather use a dynamic EQ to pull those out rather than notch out so much out of the signal itself. But you can do it. So you can see here that you can use something like a mid-side preset inside of Patcher. You can remove some of that resonance from your mix. All right, next let's look at sidechaining and how we can use Soothe to sidechain our kick to our 808 to duck down some of those bass frequencies. So if you don't know how to sidechain in FL Studio, click on your kick, or for me, I have a drum bus. Right click on the 808, say sidechain to this track. Then I've opened up Soothe on my 808, as you can see here. Click this cog icon, go to processing, sidechain, and select channel 1. Okay, so now our kick is being sidechained, or our drum bus is being sidechained to our 808. And because I only want to duck down those bass frequencies, I'm going to disable all of these filters. So band 1, band 2, I'm going to disable all of them. I don't want them to be active. I just want my high cut, and let's make it a little bit sharper. Bring it all the way down here, and my low. So I only wanted to grab everything. Let's do something like this where we make it a resonant, maybe up to, I don't know, 200. So after 200 cycles, we're rolling off because we don't want it to process too much beyond that. So let's actually take a look at what it's doing. Oh, and by the way, you have to enable sidechain here. So if I enable sidechain and I have my drum bus and my 808 solo, so let's take a listen. And I want it to duck down right away and also release it fast. So there we go. Let's see what a difference it makes. So minus 23, 24, let's play that again. Minus 9, minus 11. Let's bypass it. Let's see what it's actually doing. So this is what it's removing from my actual 808. Every time the kick comes, and I gotta be careful because there it's picking up the snare. One of the benefits of having Soothe doing your sidechain, or just sidechaining in general, is even if you roll off maybe about a decibel worth of information in the bottom end, you're creating more headroom for yourself in the mix after. All right, well, how would we achieve this if we don't have Soothe? I've opened up Fruity Limiter, and since we already have the drum bus sidechain to the 808, then I can go straight to the comp section, and under sidechain, select 1. If you right click it, you'll see drum bus, since that's the one that's being sidechained to the 808. So since we're sidechaining that, I can take down the threshold. And you'll see, let's increase that ratio. So for every 2 decibels that go beyond that threshold, it's only going to allow 1 decibel to come through. And notice that it's being activated every time the kick kicks. So let's play that again. See that? So it's sidechaining every time the kick kicks. And this is the threshold of the kick, by the way, because you're sidechaining it. See that? So every time that kick comes through, it's ducking out the signal. That's why you sidechain using just the stock Fruity Limiter. Lastly, let's look at frequency unmasking. So frequency masking happens when you have clashing frequencies. So let's say there's a lot of information on the bottom end or the mids between two separate channels. So it could be your kick and your bass. It could be vocals and a guitar, or synth and vocals, or synth and a guitar. It happens across various different mixes. So it all depends on where that information is. And when they're clashing, oftentimes you'll get what's called frequency masking. So there's a sense of muddiness or lack of clarity when that happens. And I've created a whole video on unmasking frequency. So if you're interested in seeing a full explanation on what it is and how to solve it, I'm going to put a link right over here. But for the sake of today's example, let's look at how we can use Soothe to unmask our mix. And then let's look at how we can do that using stock FL Studio plugins. All right, since we're already sidechaining our drum bus to our 808, let's unmask some of the clashing frequencies rather than just pulling off some of that low end. So remember, the drum bus is already being sidechained, so I've reset Soothe, and I'm gonna enable sidechain here. So that means every time the drum bus is gonna play, it's gonna duck down some of the frequencies. Now, the reason why I initially disabled all of the filters and just rolled the high cut filter down is because I only wanted to remove the low end. But by default, when you sidechain, Soothe actually unmasks. So Soothe removes any clashing frequencies automatically from the signal. And you'll see if I play the 808 and the drum bus at the same time, with just a default setting. You can see where the hi-hats are and some of the snare. This is predominantly just hi-hats. It's ducking out the signal. If I take off the sidechain, nothing happens. So if I move this filter down, I want to pull out some of that low end. Now it's pulling everything. And let's say I want to unmask some of that low end rumble. And although it looks like it's doing a lot, you'll see if I actually go into Delta and play just the 808, you'll hear that every time the drum and the 808 clashes, it's not removing that much. You actually can't even hear it unless I over-exaggerate it. Now you should be able to hear it. So if we make a really quick attack, sharpness, there we go. Now you can hear it. But if I don't over-exaggerate it like that, there we go. This is something like this. And let's try that again. See, it's pulling off some of this information here. I can make it a little bit less selected so it's a little bit more broad and not just pulling the peaks. All right, let's see the difference it makes here now when we bypass it and when we leave it enabled. So let's look at how we would unmask those frequencies using just a parametric equalizer. The first thing I need to do is add a parametric EQ on my drum bus so I can, one, see where some of the energy is. So for my drum bus, I can see there's a lot of energy around 60 Hertz. And then I need to add a Fruity Peak controller. So I've added a Fruity Peak controller on my drum bus. Then load up a Fruity Parametric EQ on your 808. Let's select the 63 cycle filter right here. We can leave it as a low shelf, or we can change it as a simple Q filter like this. And what we can do is click on it. So this one right here, right click on it and say link to controller. And then in the controller, I need to select the Fruity Peak controller peak. And then for the mapping formula, choose inverted. Then click accept, and you'll see now it actually boosts this filter. So all we need to do is adjust the bass, which gives us our starting point. And then if we play now we can see it's ducking, but a lot. So let's adjust it by adjusting the volume. And you can also play with the decay and the tension, but let's change this filter and make it a little bit narrower. You can also move that filter down where some of that energy is. So if you want to move it a little bit lower, you can. Or if you want to put it a little bit higher, you can. But typically the energy was around those 60 cycle mark. Or maybe I can put it around like 58. So you can see every time the kick comes through, it ducks it down. So that's one way you can frequency unmask just using stock FL Studio plugin. So again, if you want to see the full tutorial, I have linked the video, but that's how you can use Soothe to help you get a cleaner mix. So you don't necessarily just have to slap it on and go nuts with it, but it's good for pulling out some of that resonance in your mix, and it's good for, again, sidechaining, mid-side EQing. So if you have resonance just in the sides, but you don't want to remove the life from your mid, so you want your mid signal to be clean, but you want to pull out some of that resonance from the sides, you can do that, or vice versa. You can sidechain and duck down your 808 every time it kicks, or you can just unmask frequencies as I just demonstrated. So I hope this helped you. I know when I look online, oftentimes for ways of using plugins, oftentimes you'll see reviews or you'll see people just endorsing a product and saying, hey, look, I added on, and they don't really show you what it's doing or how to properly use these techniques. So these are techniques that I use, and the biggest benefit for me from having Soothe as a plugin in my arsenal is just the time that it saves me. So again, you can achieve this using just stock plugins, but sometimes there are plugins that are just more efficient and give you that value. It's not necessary. You can get the same results, but it just takes you a little bit longer. So if you do find that valuable, feel free to get yourself a copy, but hopefully that answered some of the questions. I know I get asked by people how to use this, or is it worth it? So hopefully this added some clarity for you. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you share this with somebody that could benefit from this. And as always, I hope that this inspired you to go and make some music. Peace.